Now we're holding back over here in the words of Rabbi Tatz in the world of Bechira, and we mentioned last time that if a person does actions in their life without thinking, even though they might do the right thing, so the reward and the benefits are very minimal, because at the time that you're doing the right thing, there is no real Bechira, there's no free will decision that is going to be in place. And it should be also that the same thing is relatively true, that if I'm doing the wrong thing, now I made choices at one point in my life to do the wrong thing, but I got habituated into the wrong thing, the punishments of 20 years down the road of continually doing the wrong thing is much less than it was in the initial stages when I was using my free will to make the wrong choice. 20 years down the road, I don't even think anymore when I do the wrong thing. I just do the wrong thing. So he writes like this today. And he says like this, HaRamchal b'Mesilas Yesharim. There's a very famous work written by the Ramchal, Rabbi HaChaim Mutzato, and it's called Mesilas Yesharim, The Path of the Just. And he says, Miftes Hadvarim b'Chidus, and he's very sharp in what he says over there. So the Ramchal says over the following, he's speaking over here about the trait of Tahara, of purity, which is a very high, lofty level. The Mesilas Yesharim is a spiritual ladder of growth in Avodas Hashem and serving God, and it has many, many different rungs. And already one of the higher rungs of the ladder is Tahara, is purity. And he's speaking about what a person has to do to gain such a high level. So he says like this. He says if you mix in the wrong intent when you're doing a mitzvah, you have ulterior motives or the like, or like we just saw in the Chofetz Chaim, perhaps you're not interested so much in doing the mitzvah at the time that you're doing it, you do it begrudgingly. So if a person has ulterior motives in the mitzvahs that he is doing, says the Gemara, says the Chofetz Chaim, Al kol panim ha'ma'aseh sheta'areves kazu b'seichei, an act that has such ulterior motives that are involved, Torah legamrei einenu. You can't say that act, that mitzvah that he did, even though he did an amazing mitzvah, but there were other things in his mind while he was doing it, or other intentions that he wanted to get out of it, it's not purely a holy act. Kihine, says the Ramchal, because, consider the following, just like you're not allowed to bring on the altar in the Beis HaMikdash down here in this world. You're not allowed to bring Eliselis Nekiah Menupa B'Shloishes Nafa. When they would bring the flour offering, Flour offering, it had to be sifted through 13 different sieves, because Shekvar Tor Legami Mikol Sigid had to be completely refined of any impurity, of any sediment, anything that was in there. So you could only offer up the purest and the cleanest of all flour onto the mizbech, onto the altar as an offering. Just like down here, the only way to offer onto the altar is something that is on the highest level of cleanliness and gets and purified and refined. So when it comes to offering a mitzvah on the upper altar, which means on Hashem's altar, whenever you do a mitzvah, you're offering a sacrifice, so to speak, to Hashem. It has to be liyos ma'avodis hakel shleimu mevucheres. We want to offer up the avodah, the service of God, that is in the best and the choicest of ways. Ela muvchar b'shebemaisim. It should be the choicest of all actions. Hator mikol minei sig, and it should be refined from any impurity that's going to be in there. Which means that if a person does a mitzvah, they want to make sure that mitzvah that they have chosen to do over here is on the highest level that they possibly can. Again, this is the Ramchal speaking about high, lofty levels, but he's just telling you what it is. And if I have sediment or I have impurities that are in my actions because I have ulterior motives, or I'm not motivated, or I'm not happy about the mitzvah and I'm doing things begrudgingly, whatever the situation might be. So although that I did the mitzvah, but it certainly is not the mitzvah the way that Hashem intended me to eventually get to. And therefore he says, Ve'eineni oimer I'm not telling you, says the Ramchal, that Hashem pushes your mitzvah off completely. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not withdraw the reward that is due to any single creature. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will pay you the reward based on the action that you have done. However, says the Ramchal, what I'm speaking about is the perfection of your service. That much that you did not get to, the Ramchal says you did not get to. So the reward you're going to get, because Hashem has a blanket rule, and that is any creature that does any good, they get rewarded. But I can't give you the loftiest levels of reward because you had too much sediment and it was too unrefined in the way that you did it. Now, what does Rabbi Tatz want with these words? What does it have to do with our Bechira? Al kol ma'aseh mitzvah yesh schar. Every ma'aseh mitzvah, and every single mitzvah that a person does, there's reward that they're going to receive. Ulam le mitzvah nasi v'torch hergel. However, when a person does a mitzvah because they are conditioned to do that mitzvah, the only reward that you're going to get is because Hashem gives reward to every creature for the good things that they do. Says Rabbi Tatz, where does this language come from in Chazal and our sages that Hashem does not withdraw or overlook the reward that is going to any creature in this world for doing the right thing? We learn it out from Yetzias Mitzrayim, from the Exodus of Egypt. That means that when the Jewish people were leaving on that night of the Exodus, of the redemption, so there were a lot of dogs in Egypt. And the normal thing is that when things are unusual or going around in town, dogs bark. As we know, dogs before the earthquake, they sense the earthquake coming and they always bark beforehand. When there's trouble in the house, if it's a good dog and he's trained, he'll start barking. So if they see the Egyptians are being destroyed, and 3 million Jews are piling out of the land, and they're making noise, and there's men, there's women, there's children, there's animals, all different things. So the dogs should have been barking. But the dogs didn't bark. They didn't want to bother and irritate the Jewish people. They didn't want to make the Jewish people anxious at that time that they were going to their freedom. So the dogs kept their mouth shut and they didn't bark a single bark the entire night while the Jewish people were leaving. That was a great thing in the eyes of the great thing. The Torah so much so writes about the dogs that they didn't bark, to show that it was a very holy moment, and even the dogs themselves were not barking at the Jewish people. So it says over there, and Hashem does not withhold the reward for any creature. And that's why later on in the Torah, the dogs are rewarded, that if a person has an animal that's a treifa, which means cannot be used as a kosher animal, whatever, it has something wrong with one of its lungs, it has another blemish someplace else, and you cannot serve it on the barbecue, so what do you do with that meat? So the Torah says, let's reward the dogs. Since that the dogs did not bark when the Jewish people were leaving Egypt, so we have to give them something. So what's the reward they're going to get? They're going to get all the treif meat. We're going to throw the meat, we're going to throw it off to the dogs. Tamun kan elboin amuk, says Rabbi Tatz. So there's a very disgraceful thing then that is being said over here. Mi shoysa mitzvah l'loi kavanas mispaked berama shabal chai. A person who does a mitzvah without thinking about the mitzvah that they are doing, they are on the same level as a bal chai, as an animal, as a dog. Hashem says, I can't withhold reward from you completely because at the end of the day, you did the mitzvah. However, if you did an action, you did a mitzvah because your natural reflexes push you in that direction to the mitzvah, So what's the difference between you and the dog who doesn't bark when the Jewish people are leaving Egypt? And the reward is going to be expressed in the same exact way. Dogs don't make any choices. It's not like the dog said, wow, should we bark? Should we not bark tonight? You know, it would be really nice of us if we didn't bark while the Jewish people are walking out of Egypt, because if we bark, they're going to get scared, they're going to get nervous, the kids might start screaming and crying. You know how these little kids get when the dog barks. So, you know what? Let's be nice dogs tonight and let's not bark. There was no Bechira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made in the creation at that moment that the magnificent act of the Jewish people leaving Egypt after all those years, the power of the Shekhinah was so potent and palpable, the dogs couldn't bark. There was nothing going on. And still, they get rewarded for not barking. Their actions are just a reflection of their nature. And therefore, people, human beings, that act, and it's just a reflection or just an expression of that which is their nature. They do not really express the essence of who they are, as HaKoach Livro, which, as we pointed out the other day, is the powers that a person has inside of them, livro, to create and be machadish and bring new things here into their lives in the world. And therefore the reward that a person receives for a mitzvah that they did by hergel, which is just habitually, it's no better than the meat that's getting thrown to the dog because he didn't bark when the Jews were leaving Egypt. So I assume that everybody wants to be more than the quiet dog who's getting meat thrown to him. And yet Chazal are telling us that a person who ends up doing mitzvahs without even thinking about what they're doing, yes, you're doing something good, and therefore you deserve a reward. You said Kiddush Friday night. You made a bracha on your Hamaitzi Lechem min haaretz. You gave your tzedakah. It's wonderful. Don't stop. You got to do mitzvahs. But if you think about what you're doing, and therefore you use your free will when you're doing it, it's a loftier level of the mitzvah. Then he quotes over here the Ravid. The Ravid is one of the antagonists of the Rambam. The Rambam has a large set of sarma, a long halachic work, which is called Mishnah Torah. And the Rambam went through all of the Gemaras and all of Chazal, and he wrote his halachic compendium. The Ravid is his arguer. And in different places in his work, the Ravid comes and he says, I don't understand exactly what the Rambam is talking about. Now, one of the areas that the Ravid and the Rambam argue about is in the world of Bechira, of free will, exactly how it works. He doesn't agree with everything that the Rambam says, but the Ravid espouses the following opinion. And he says, the Ravid v'oid, a person must use their free will to go beyond the nature of the astrological world. So the Ravid over here understands that there's mazalos, there's astrology, and there are powers of stars, whatever exactly that means, the mazel of the Jewish people. And the Ravid says, use your bechira, use your free will, to go beyond what the astrological signs of the person are. And he says, Ha'adam nimsa kafuv l'koiches hateva, a person in general is somewhat under the reign of the natural influences of this world, or powers of this world. But it's upon the person to find a way to break free of the natural world, the natural tendencies that exist, in order they could be chayfshi, in order they could be free. While you're in this world and you're living your life day to day the way that you normally do, you're really just a creature of habit. And you're under the spell, so to speak, of the stars, of the natural world, of that which is going on. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants more than that from us. He wants us to be chayfshi, he wants us to be free. The only way to become free is if you're able to break through the mundane, through the habitual, through that which is the natural tendencies of a person, and create more for yourself. If there's things over there that are just naturally happening where you're falling into evil and into bad, so livrayach, run away from it. And even if you're doing something that's good, meaning again, if I'm doing something that's bad and I just keep doing it on a daily basis, run away, says the Ravid. Go, use your Bechira, use your free will, pull yourself away from the things that are not good for you. If you're doing something that's good, so that's noble, and that's a great thing that you're doing. But if you're doing it because it's just habitual, that's the way that you do it, says the Ramchal, says the Ravid, use your Bechira, your free will, to elevate the action, to make it a concerted, conscious effort of what you are doing. That's what it means over here, the intent that a person should have in mitzvahs. There's a concept in Shas, in the Gemara, that says, mitzvahs tzrichos kavanos. Mitzvahs need kavanah, they need intention. What does it mean? It means that you have to be aware while you're doing the mitzvah, what it is that you're doing. That's your intention. I'm aware of what I'm doing so that it's becoming a live mitzvah right now. Mitaych bechira v'ratzayin, and it comes through your own bechira, your free will, and your desire. We are zarmim ba'olam, we are strongly influenced by the natural forces that are just flowing in this world, unless we decide and we choose to strengthen ourselves against the natural flow of the world that is there. When a person chooses to go to elevate themselves over them, so then it awakens inside of him. Ein mazel Yisrael. There is no such thing as mazel, as forces, heavenly forces over the Jewish people. We are l'mayla min mazel. We are above the laws of nature. Only though, says Rav Tatz, if we use our Bechira to elevate ourselves above and beyond. Have a wonderful day, everybody. We will see you on Wednesday.
Thank you, Rabbi.